I often consider myself a prisoner of my own brittle chains, primarily because of the fact that I often felt constricted by my own limitations. There will be many times in which I want to learn something, and yet I'm unable to do so because said subject is sometimes more complex than I want it to be. One example is when I went to look at a lesson about how artificial intelligence works, and the person, he showed up a bunch of equations that I couldn't really understand, and well, it did frustrate me, but of course that does not make me any less human, and well, everyone has something that they can use, even if they feel limited in some ways. If there's anything I learned from my own family, it's just the fact that I must work hard in order to be able to live successfully, as both my parents, they came from Korea at a very early point in their lives, and my dad, he was just a student who eventually became a pretty successful businessman, as he now works in an insurance company and makes a good amount of money. And then as for my mother, she knew even less English than my father did when she came to America, and despite that, she managed to show her talent for singing and is now currently a choir master, and every once in a while would perform in an opera. When it comes to childhood dreams, there are primarily two different careers that I really wanted to pursue. The first one being marine biology, because many times I would go to the aquarium and look at the wildlife there, or maybe just walk along the beach and enjoy the beauty of the ocean. However, over time I became more interested in the idea of computer programming and the teachings of computer science, and so I tried to teach myself how to code, and just in the hope that I'll know how to do so eventually. And I've even actually created a team for a video game that I'm going to create, and when I asked my friends about it, they were all very excited. My favorite place to be at would probably be somewhere within nature, like say a forest, a beach, or perhaps a canyon. And part of the reason that I enjoy going to such places so much is that there were many times when I just felt frustrated at the stress that I was feeling in society. And nature provides a very good outlet for me to relieve my stress, if you will. And then several years ago, I started to write poetry a lot more, and going to nature just provided yet another outlet through which I can write about. And I just thought that was fantastic. My mother is particularly important to me because of the fact that she is around me a lot more often than my dad is because he's off working. Nothing against him, but any time where I wanted to discuss something about my own ambitions, whether it be, publishing a poetry book or creating a video game, and she would always listen very intently and would encourage me and tell me that I should go for it. And I feel like it has a lot to do with the fact that she herself had to work very hard to achieve what she wanted to do, so I think she wants to see the same thing in me. I remember one time while we were doing a group project, I actually had to be pulled aside by one of my partners, and he told me that I was being somewhat oppressive and ignoring what the emotions of other people were. And although he didn't say it, he was basically saying that I was acting perhaps too Machiavellian, if you will, which pretty much just means that I just care about getting the project completed and not having much regard for how we go about doing it properly when it comes to the feelings of other people. I ultimately found out that cooperating with the people and making sure that everyone is participating in the way that they should be is the best way to go about it, and that I shouldn't act in such a hostile manner towards another person. A lot of adults, particularly teachers, especially one, which I will not be naming, just to be polite, seem to really enjoy downplaying the aspirations of the generation below them because they feel entitled to superiority simply because of the fact that they have more experience. And although sometimes that can be true, that does not take into account that some members of the generation below are quite brilliant
and are capable of major contributions to society.
When the adults do try to act in such a way, the only one that should determine whether or not you continue or end the path to a certain goal should honestly be you. Being a student, one of my biggest accomplishments up to this point is perhaps just the fact that I've, up to this point, managed to keep straight A's for basically every year that I've been in school. And what I've learned when stressing over how to keep those grades up, I can never really let my guard down, because if I do, well, that can obviously lead to problems and ultimately can lead to failure. I would consider myself to be a realist because of the fact that I personally found it to be most effective when approaching a certain obstacle in my life. Let's say it was a death in the family or some other events that would cause a strong emotional reaction. And during those times, I always found that acting emotionally ultimately just hindered my own progress, and it was better for me to just look at the facts for what they were and adapt accordingly. I think it is important that everyone should remain active and constantly setting a higher standard for themselves and not being lazy about pursuing said goals, because one day, if you give enough effort, will eventually probably come true. To me, the biggest tragedy is if somebody was to waste the potential that they had purely because of the fact that they were just lazy. So, as a result, I guess the only thing I can really say is, well, don't hold back.